if you're someone, it doesn't have to be Christopher Rufo. So you're someone who agrees, at least generally, with the cause of trying to remove certain things from schools, trying to, reform universities to remove leftist ideology from authority positions, to just kind of be blunt about it. Things along those lines, certain things in education, K through 12, and not even just critical race theory. It's kind of the whole critical pedagogy package altogether. If you're one of those people who is on board with that, what would you do if there was also a Nazi problem, at least in people that you're assumed are going to vote for the same candidate as you?
Okay. I think that, first of all, if your position is in line with Nazis, then probably some self-reflection is in order. That's the first thing that I would say. I think maybe like the concern or the question or the direction of it is misdirected. If Nazis are seeing that your perspective is something that they can use, then you need to think about your perspective. I don't think it's something that you should then say. I don't think the question is then like necessarily how do we get these Nazis out of here so we can continue on the work. The question is, well, what is the work that we're doing that Nazis think that they can jump on the bandwagon? I think that's the question.
Okay. I mean, my response to that would be, well, it's kind of twofold. What if you have thought about it and taken that as a genuine concern, and you're still convinced that you are, it doesn't change your position?
Okay, well, is that you personally?
I mean, yes.
So then can I ask, in terms of the self-reflection you did about Nazis jumping on this bandwagon, what were your thoughts and what conclusion did you come to that made you feel like I'm still doing the right thing?
Sure. From a purely self-respective, I would look, I personally did. And I'm not going to say that I had an existential crisis because Nazis agreed with me about something. It's not something that just popped out of nowhere unexpectedly. It's not something that a lot of people didn't see coming or specifically, online warn about pretty directly. It's just that, well, without jumping into a second question, I don't think, if I look at the things that I'm against, the things that I want, taken out of schools, just to stick to kind of Rufo shtick, I don't think that I can't bring myself to find any train of thought where I think teaching those things in school is a good thing.
Can you give me one example? Because so far, every single time you've talked about stuff being removed from schools, you say things. You've said things a lot of times. I have no idea what thing that you're talking about, because you got to realize, right, that some of these people are literally like one thing that's happening. Do you know the streamer Destiny?
I mean, somewhat. I have probably in the last 4 or 5 months.
Yeah,
I've seen it come up, and I did. That has been a couple times. If I'm flipping through YouTube, I was on his channel looking for headlines that looked interesting, clicking and watching. So a little, yeah, I'd say a little bit.
Yeah, so I had a conversation with Destiny about race as well, and during that conversation, I mentioned to Destiny that conservatives and people in Rufo's camp and following Rufo's direction were banning books of civil rights icons from the 60s who are still alive and writing books and talking about them presently. And they're banning those people from talking about their books. They're not even dead. They're still out here talking about civil rights.
Which book are we? It was the one, but it doesn't matter. But is there one that jumped out just that I might have heard of?
It was the Ruby Bridges book. Ruby Bridges, the young woman who was integrated into Little Rock, Arkansas schools. One of many, one of a few anyway. But Yeah, it was Ruby Bridges' book that was banned in Florida. And, he always like kind of fact checks people in real time, right? Which is great. But he's so used to fact checking people and finding all these nuances or discrepancies and then being able to use that in the conversation. But you could see in the video, which I'll be editing and putting out later, that he can't find that because it's true. That is what's happening. And so I think that like it really matters whether you think that that is something that should happen or shouldn't happen, or if you're making some kind of distinction, because for these people, probably what you're about to say and that is in the same category of things. So I'm just putting that out there to explain why I need that clarification. I do think you need to rethink what you're thinking, but not because of the Nazi issue. Okay?
Sure.
I don't think that you have characterized what is happening realistically or accurately. Okay? I think that you've come to understand what's going on in a way that is not real. And so you're using that to come to your conclusion. So we have to target the part that, in my opinion, is not real. So I'm going to draw your attention to that now.
Sure.
So people are not trying to characterize people's identities by doing privilege walks. And to assign characteristics of people based on a privilege walk. Do you know what a privilege walk is?
Yes.
Can you tell me your idea of one? Because I'm going to use this as an example to show you why engaging in a privilege walk cannot have the intention that you said. So
Sure.
I want you to tell me what you think it is.
Sure. And I don't know if there's a bunch of versions. The version I'm familiar with is where it's kind of like, you name off a number of factors, and no, race is not the only one. It'll be like, did you have both parents in the house take a step forward? Things like that. Race is, of course, one of them, but they ask a number of factors. And then at the end, the idea is kind of like, look how far ahead or behind your starting point is based on those around you, or compared to those around you, to be fair.
Okay. And so you acknowledge that this is not based on race. Race is just one of many different factors that people use in these privilege walks. And
yes. I disagree with the others too.
Why? What could you possibly be disagreeing with? Like what could you disagree with?
Sure. And again, it's another example where it's not the specific activity I take issue with. It's what are we trying to do here? What is the goal?
Right, but again,
what are we trying to instill in the children?
Well, okay, what we're trying to instill in the children is nothing that you said. Okay, so like
I know that.
Okay,
I want to be clear. I don't. When I talked about the essentialism stuff, I don't think someone sat down and said what we want to do is make kids into race essentialists. I don't. I think that's an effect of what's happening, and that's I do believe that is philosophically what you're doing. But I do not believe that is the stated intention. But go ahead. What would you say is the stated intention?
Before we get to that, I just have to understand, do you think that people were not being essentialized by race before these programs and stuff and ideas? Is that your mindset?
Do you mean ever in history or just like
I mean before recent? These started, anytime.
At any time? Yeah, sure, totally.
What about just before?
Just before, if there was, not to the extent that it is with this.
And I think that the only reason you have that perspective, sir, is because you had no idea. You probably were not thinking about this subject matter almost at all.
So what was an example?
But am I wrong? But am I wrong? Before we get into that, am I wrong?
I don't. Wrong about that this was happening?
About what you were thinking about before this stuff came into your sphere of knowledge and understanding. Were you thinking about the subject of race before that enough that you would have known if race essentialism was happening?
Yeah.
Really? For what? That's extreme.
I
That's
think so.
extremely rare. So like, I want to find out more about that. What was making you think about the subject?
Which specific subject? Like I think
Race.
I
The
have a pretty
subject of
good
race.
understanding that if race essentialism was starting to happen around me on any level, I definitely think I would be able to catch on to that. Yeah.
All right. Well, the evidence shows that that's not the case for most people. So, are you aware of that?
Am I aware that most people, and I do, I just want to make sure I'm understanding. Do I think most people realize when race is being essentialized?
When yeah, race essentialization is happening. Mm-hmm.
If it's subtle, probably not.
Okay. Okay, great. So we can agree on that. Okay, that
Yeah.
if race essentialism is subtle, sometimes even if it's overt, I would even say a lot of people cannot perceive it. I don't think it's easy to perceive for most people. And the reason why it's not, and that's what I've learned through all my conversations, and the reason why it's not is because people don't learn a lot about it. And what they do learn often comes with misinformation and disinformation, and people are totally unaware of that. I mean, because they have no context to put this subject into. And without context, you can never understand what's happening now or in the past. So I also noticed that when you talked about the issue, you left out a lot of context. And so I don't think you did that on purpose. I think that's just the way that you're thinking about it. Thanks for watching. For access to the full-length conversation and all of the 2-hour-long unedited conversations that I've had on race, click the support link in the description below. Thanks for your support and see you next time.